we are going live back to back to back to back. And we just finished an episode called, if you didn't get a chance to be able to check it out, it was episode 463, and it was all about a good name. And I got this in my head as far as like people had asked me, sometimes how do these spiritual things, or maybe, when I'm talking about proverbs or corresponding proverb for the corresponding day, like we do with Inchstones, they're asking me like, well, how does this apply in my business? And for the last 3 proverbs, it's been amazing because this is the blueprint in business, right? And this doesn't come from theory. This comes from me and my wife building $1 million locations all over the country. We did it in the professional beauty industry. We did it with 19 to 24-year-olds, and we did it when we weren't there on a day-to-day basis, meaning that we had to build our really, really strong why we were doing it. We had to build our leadership. That leadership took and built the culture, and the culture ended up spitting out the systems, which was nothing more than a list of our screw-ups. And so this comes not from theory, but from experience. And today's proverb, Proverb 23, which is 3,000-year-old wisdom, gives us a blueprint on how to build any business. But before you listen to this one, go back and listen to 463, because 463 Inchstones was all about creating a good name. And honestly, there's no reason for you to even go through and build any business at all if you don't have a good name and a foundation of a good name. And if you don't have that, no matter what business you ever build, at some point it's going to crumble because what people associate with it. We got to build a good name. But today's episode, or the second episode today, is going to be all about how to build any business. If you're in the professional beauty industry, if you're in real estate, if you're in the financial world, whatever business you're doing, a coffee shop, to build that business, 3,000-year-old wisdom, I think we should get this party started.
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
The only reason why I started my first business because I got fired on my day off, like Craig on Friday. I got a call. It was 2006. The NCAA tournament was happening. I was barbecuing at the house. I get a phone call. I walk outside. I take that phone call. Then I get another phone call, and I walk back in, and I have my barbecue, and I sit down, and I guess everyone kind of could feel it on me, feel my energy. And my wife, who was just my friend at the time, is sitting next to me. She's like, "You okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I just got fired from my job." And then I went back to eating chicken, and we watched the NCAA championship. Now, for me, I don't choose to focus on getting fired. What I choose to focus on is all the great opportunity that came through that. And that was starting my first business. So it wasn't some huge inspiration, but it was one of those things where I didn't realize that it was going to happen. Although the principles and the foundation that my pops and mom had laid for years and years and years, and the school that I had been in, which was the greatest school in the entire world, getting to be around some of the greatest, Robert Cromines, Stephanie Kachelski, Margaret Cromines. If you're in the professional beauty industry, you know exactly who I'm talking about. If you're not in the professional beauty industry, these are the 96 bulls of the professional beauty industry. These were the absolute best in the world. And I got the opportunity to be around them for, 5-6 years. It was amazing. Actually, even longer, almost 10 years. So it was phenomenal. And so when I went to start my own business, obviously, I wish that I would have had somebody listed out like what I'm going to list out for you. I had to learn it through the school of hard knocks, making a lot of mistakes and being young and making dumb decisions that were emotional and circumstantial as opposed to principle-based. And that's the reason why I wanted to share the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day. I'm going back to just wisdom. This is a business plan, but it's not coming from me. It's coming from the observation of me studying wisdom for 30 some odd years and doing the corresponding proverb, corresponding day, 3,000-year-old wisdom. We call them Inchstones. And these little Inchstones, think about the milestones in your life. Sometimes they become overwhelming. But imagine if you could just put one little thing. And I would be remiss to think that you're going to take every single one of these points and put them to heart. But one thing might stick out, that little tiny Inchstone. So if you want to build any business, in verse 1 through 3 in Proverbs 23 is just to realize we have to understand that we are in the people business. And some people say, no, I'm in the technology business. Well, if you understand that you're in the people business, people will consume what it is that you're doing. If nobody consumes it, then you don't have a business. If you don't have people that are working with you, whether it be independent contractors or connection point, whatever it is, we got to realize that we're in the people business. My pops always said there's only one business in the world, one business only, and that's the people business. Take the people out the business, you have no business at all. Build the people, allow the people to build a business. That's where we go. And it's amazing in working, with C-suite, executives and doing that kind of work, working with companies, whether it be on their payroll, their pay structure, their communication. It's amazing what can happen when we realize and when those leaders of the company or the founder or the C-suite executives understand that they're simply in the people business. And you can draw out the greatest in people in your organization. In verse 4 and 5, for us to realize in this, and I wish I would have understood this, is money is a tool. It's not the target. Money is a tool. It's not the target. See, when I first started my business, I was like, oh man, well, if we could get to X number, well, what I started to do is alienate people. But realize that the money was just a tool. And so what was the tool? What were you going to do with the tool? I had a friend named Chris, and I was on a plane, and I missed my flight, and I had to buy a first-class ticket because I was doing a speaking engagement in Michigan, and I had to be there. So the only ticket that they had available was a first-class ticket. Well, I was mad because I had to pay $1,100 on the spot to be able to get this, but it was first class. So I walked through the airport, and I think I'm the only person that is angry about being in first class. But it was because I had just had to pay for it, $1,100 out of my own pocket, which dug into my fee that I was getting paid. But I sit down, I'm angry, I have Beats headphones on, and I sit down, and a guy reaches over, takes it off my ear and says, how are you doing today? And I thought, man, you wear these Beats headphones so people don't talk to you. But he asked me, and we went through the conversation, and he told me so many different things. And one of the things that stuck out was he said that he had a guy that, said that he wanted to make, $500,000 a year. And so Chris, my friend, said, okay, cool. So he wrote out a check for $500,000, and he went to hand it to him, and he held onto the check as the guy grabbed it. He went to pull it. The guy went to pull it, and he pulled it back, and he said, okay, what are you going to buy with this? He said, I'm actually going to pay off my mom's house, and I'm going to buy a boat. And so Chris pulled the check back, and he said, I want you to focus on that, and you'll make way more than the $500,000 that I was going to give you right now. So focus on the reason why you're wanting this thing, and that will be the motivating factor, and it'll create exponential gain anyway. So imagine this. Money is a tool. It's not the end all. It's not the target. In verse 6 through 8, it talked about beware of investors too early. And this was a big one. And building any business, I hear so many people that will have a great idea, and they'll be like, I don't have the money, but my friend is the investor. Well, I could tell you this. If the friend becomes the investor too early and you don't have inertia behind what it is that you're doing, so just start small. What'll happen is that money will become in control, and then when you're leveraged over your head, you will have to do things that are outside of your character and why you started it in the first place. So be careful of leverage and debt, and look at autonomy as much as possible, even if it means that you have a smaller business. Start small, little bit by little bit by little bit. And if you, I would think this way, if at all possible, stay away from having investors come in. Once they do, it changes the game. Even my friends who work at a high level and they've sold their companies publicly, they're at a point where they built it and then they brought the people in. But I have friends that have sold their companies for, like generational wealth, and then watched the business that they built not be in the same place. But just be conscious of this, of bringing on investors too early, because this is probably one of the biggest things with young business owners, or with business owners that want to grow and want to scale, will want to bring on money. But what will that money cost you? Not just in the percentage, but what will it cost you in your culture? In verse number 9, it talks about having a board of directors. Make sure that you have that and that you seek wise counsel. In verse 10 and 11, in building any business, is speak well of all other businesses in your lane and in general. Simply find the good things to say, right? And this is a massive one. If you constantly are a business that constantly speaks well of every other person, because there's enough out there. You don't need to compete with anybody. In verse 12, study the greats, not only in your industry. This was a big one for us because we were in the professional beauty industry for years, but we didn't just study the professional beauty industry. We studied the Ritz-Carlton, the Four Seasons. We studied different people who gave phenomenal personal service, because that's what we were in. We were in the people business. And what did actually people want, and where did they get it? They got it from a lot of different areas. I studied Audi of Henderson with Jim DiGiulio. Now he's with Findlay, Volvo of Cars of Las Vegas. The way in which they serve. A guy named Ali right now that has Kearney Mesa Infinity. My wife needed a car. I called him, said, this is what we want to pay. He said, okay, cool. He made two phone calls to her, delivered the car, picked up her car as a trade-in, and she signed a couple of papers. Boom, she's done. Service at Kearney Mesa Infinity is off the charts. Even though I'm now a keynote speaker and a podcaster, why wouldn't I study that so I can make sure to deliver that type of service? Next one is in verse 13. It's develop easily translatable core values. And this is probably one of the biggest ones. Is in the onboarding is very essential that you communicate these things. But let me say it again. Develop easily translatable core values. So many people say my core values are integrity, and they're not personalized. The core values have to be personalized to the company itself, and every single person in the company should be able to rattle them off. This is what we built a multi-million-dollar company with. Simply show up on time, wear black, smile, empty the dustpan. And everyone knew why they were. Show up on time. It's a respect of your time, the client's time, and your team's time. Number 2, wear black. We're a community. No one's more important than the other. Smile, because happy people make more money than people with a frown on their face. And empty the dustpan. No one should have to deal with your garbage before they deal with their own. 4 principles that every single person in the company could rattle off at any given time. If they can't rattle off the core principles, they're not your core principles. But we have to communicate them and make sure you do that in the onboarding process. In verse 15 and 16, in Proverbs 23, it says, create your own cultural language. This will create elevated buy-in and ownership mentality. You got to have clear definitions. So we called it burgers and fries. Burgers and fries was haircuts and color. Right? Those were our main things that we did in the salon, but we had a translation for it. A number 1 was a 413 brush. A number 2 was a 427 brush. We had code or language inside of our culture. Build from behind the chair, as opposed to, like when I say build from behind the chair, how could you create such a great environment where the person that was sitting in the chair would go out and tell 10 people, and then that way you wouldn't have to be out marketing? Imagine that. So create cultural language, things that you talk about. Like if you work with Nike, Nike only talks about certain things, and those people know what that code is. It creates buy-in because it creates a kind of an exclusive kind of club. If you want to go into that a little bit more, check out the book, The Vibe. It's in the link in the bio. In verse 17 and 18, study the greats, but stick to your core. Celebrate victories openly and specifically as often as possible. Study the greats, but don't compare yourself to them. Study the greats, don't compare yourself to them. And celebrate victories as often as possible in meetings, while you're walking down the hall, as loud as you possibly can. And then in verse 19, create a culture of listening to each other, to the market, to trends, to movements, to innovation, to the past, to the present, and to the future. Create a culture of listening. If you want to build any business, you'll create a culture of listening, not just of talking. And that's where I got into a lot of trouble with this. In verse 21 and 22, or 20 and 21, it talks about hot and cold. Don't get too high in the victories. Don't get too low in the setbacks. Keep it a little bit more even keel and realize that there's another day to be able to fight. And honestly, if it hasn't turned out exactly the way you want it to, you know what? There's going to be another day. It's going to turn out. It's going to, if it's not okay, like think of this. John Paul said to me before, everything turns out okay in the end. And if it isn't okay, it's not the end. And as a business, we need to understand this, because sometimes we go super high. We have the highest sales in the world over the holidays, and then we have a dump in January. Realize everything's going to be okay. Don't get too high in the victories. Don't get too low in defeat and the setbacks. But take the setbacks and write them down and make them your new policies, because our rules and regulations are nothing more than a list of our screw-ups. In verse 22 and 25, it talks about communication is the gold standard. See, truth, wisdom, instruction, and insight will always increase in value when they are clearly and effectively communicated. Let me say that again. Truth, wisdom, instruction, insight will always increase in value when they are clearly and effectively communicated. How do we know if we communicated? Simple. We get results. If you get results, you have communicated. If you don't get results, you did not communicate well. There's three things in communication: a sender, a receiver, and a result. If you send it and the receiver, you don't get the results, you cannot look at the receiver, because sometimes you say the right thing, but you say it in the wrong language. You're speaking Spanish, they speak Mandarin, and even though you said the exact right words, it didn't work. How many times have we ever said, I told them so many times, and they just didn't do it? Well, sometimes we were speaking in a language that they did not understand. And when we take responsibility for that, it's amazing how our business can grow. In verse 26 and 28, it talks about the difference between opportunities and distractions. They come in the exact same package. Here's an opportunity for you to go and do this, but it's outside your core, right? Oh, wow, that becomes a distraction. Here's this thing that is right inside your core, and you can do that thing. Oh, wow, that's an opportunity. But to understand the difference between the two, we must filter against our core values. But to be able to filter against the core values, we got to have them in the first place. So make sure we have them. They're simple enough, and every single person in the company can say them and articulate them and own them, meaning that they have a part of it. Showing up on time. It's probably one of the greatest things that you could ever do. I was late for a woman the other day in an appointment that I had, and when I was, she said that this is not like you. And I had to sit in it for a second, because respect to people's time is probably one of the biggest things in business. Number 2, wear black. No one's more important. No position's more important than the others. Smile. I always got to have a smile on my face every single day that I don't make minimum wage, because that's what I deserve. I graduated from high school. Although I've had businesses and grown in it, and I've been an entrepreneur for over 31 years, I still got to be happy and joyous, and I got to tell my face. I ask some people, how's your day going? They're like, I'm having a great day. I'm like, tell your face. We've got to tell our face that we're having that great day, because smiling people make more than people who aren't smiling that much. And then empty the dustpan. And emptying the dustpan is just about taking care of your garbage before anyone else comes in contact with it. So we used to figuratively and literally put the garbage can outside the door before a person walked into any of our locations. They had to figuratively and literally drop all their trash. If your dog died, if you're having a challenge with your wife, with your husband, with your kids, drop it, because somebody else is dealing with something too, and they shouldn't have to deal with your garbage and their garbage too. So we should walk in the service mentality, making sure that in our minds it's 70 and sunny, and that was a part of our communication and our language. Culturally, 70 and sunny meant everything is phenomenal today, because I choose to look at it that way. In verse number 29 and 35, where it brings us home today, is how you adapt will determine your sustainability in your industry. The ability to adapt immediately is massive in anything, because nothing is going to turn out as you planned. You could have the greatest pro forma ever, but it's just a pro forma. It's just numbers that you put down, and maybe you did it before, but you cannot You cannot plan for the circumstances that will happen in life. And generally there's going to be challenges, and that's okay, but it's how we adapt to them. Circumstances, good and bad, are inevitable, although it will be our reaction to them that will chart our course. You get to choose. If you want to build any business, go back through, take out a notebook, write down all these principles. They didn't come from me. They came from 3,000-year-old wisdom that I get a chance to study. I wish I had a study guide like this when I built my first business, because if I checked in on these things and asked myself, how do I score in them, it would have been absolutely phenomenal. Here's an actionable item for you, is take a little bit of time and with one of these principles, any of them, just ask yourself, how do I score in that one? And then go down the principles day by day as you look at them. 3,000-year-old wisdom. It's unbelievable. We have the Vibe Room coming, which is July 23rd, and that is in Salt Lake City, Utah at the Edison House. It is sold out. I said that I've been holding back 1 or 2 tickets for somebody who messaged me and says, hey, I want to come, which will be amazing. We got the Sondor Realty Group that's a alliance partner with this, Packer Insurance, Packer Goosehead Insurance, and Sage Financial Advisors. These are mortgage advisors. These guys are amazing, and they're part of our alliance partners with the Vibe Room. I want to tell you guys how much I appreciate you, and you know, going through these little Inchstones, it really gets me fired up, because I wish that I would have had this when I started my very first business. If you want to build any business in the world, it's amazing, because I would suggest go to wisdom and realize that you're in the people business. And if you take the people out of the business, you got no business at all. My name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and so.
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we can